Well, hello and welcome to November's suggested constellation of the month. In fact, you're going to get two constellations this month, but let's start with this one. So we've got four brighter stars out of that mass of stars there, four forming a box, and a few more brighter ones coming down here. Does that give you any ideas as to which constellation it is we're talking about? Some of you will know it is, of course, Pegasus. It doesn't look much like a horse, a flying horse, so let's have a look at some artwork superimposed upon it just to give you the idea. So it's upside down, as you can see. These ancients, they had to invent something just to help them name these groupings of stars. So Pegasus. So Pegasus, as described in our Brook Bond Out into Space cards, was the flying horse that was used in ancient mythology. It actually occurs in a few different myths, most famous, of course, for being the mount of Perseus, who went to save Andromeda, who was chained to the rock, as we'll see a little later on. So where to find it in the night sky? Now you should by now be quite happy with finding Cassiopeia. We talked about Cassiopeia last week, and that in fact points us down to where we can find Pegasus. So there it is. There's that quite large box, as you can see, forming the body of the constellation, the body of the horse. There's the head. There's the two front legs. And that's it as far as the constellation is concerned. This star here is called Alpheratz, and it's actually shared between Pegasus and also the next constellation that we're going to talk about, which is Andromeda. But let's stay with Pegasus for now. So Pegasus is home to some really nice objects. One Messier object, two Caldwell objects, a different catalogue, and quite a few other objects of interest as well. M15 here is a globular cluster, and it's a fine example of globular cluster. We'll see a picture of it in just a short while, but an easy way to find it is once you've identified where the head is, then find that angle. And if you project a line through these two stars, it brings you up to M15, just off this small star here. So that's relatively straightforward to find. Even binoculars will show it as not a star, but a fuzzy looking patch. Now, there are two spiral galaxies, one here near Gamma, and another fine one up here, NGC 7331, that are in the Caldwell list. You'll remember me telling you that the Caldwell objects were a set of objects put together by Patrick Caldwell Moore. Caldwell was just his hyphenated part of his surname that he didn't usually use. But for the purposes of the list, these are always known as Caldwell objects. Near to 7331, for those of you with good telescopes, I really recommend that you have a look at Stephan's quintet, a group of, as the name suggests, 5 galaxies that are faint, but well worth looking at. Seeing 5 galaxies in one field of view is quite something. Now here's a picture of 15. As you can see, a really tight and compact grouping of, I'm not sure quite how many, a good 100,000 stars, I expect, in that little close grouping. Now, how Messier didn't actually spot this galaxy, because it is quite a bright one. He's got others in his list, but needless to say, he didn't get it. It doesn't carry an M number. It now carries a Caldwell number. NGC, which you see in both of these, is the new general catalogue that is universally used to identify and list, some of the brighter objects in the sky, many thousands within that listing. So two fine objects. And as you can see, other galaxies nearby to 7331. Now, I already promised you we'd also look at Andromeda. Here she is, but it's Andromeda, of course, was the daughter of Cassiopeia, who we talked about last month, and her husband Cepheus. And the way that these gods always were doing, they had a fight. But Cassiopeia at the time was merely the wife of Cepheus, a human, and she claims that she and Andromeda were more attractive than any of Poseidon's daughters. So Poseidon didn't like this much, chained her up to be eaten by the Kraken, as I think it was called. Perseus had already killed Medusa, the Gorgon, the one with the head with all of the snakes on it, the writhing snakes which turned people to stone. So he kept it in a bag, flew on the winged horse just in the nick of the time, showed the Kraken the head, so it was obviously turned to stone, died, and as all heroes always do, he married the rescued maiden. So let's have a look. As I've already said, it shares its main star with Pegasus. Now the other stars are faint, only down to third or fourth magnitude. But once you can find that main star, you will be able to find these streaming away in a little row away from Alpheratz. And the most famous Messier object from them all, its number is M31, but it used to be called the Great Andromeda Nebula. We now know nebula really are clouds of gas, but this is in fact a galaxy. And it has two companion galaxies which can also be made out with a reasonable telescope. Let's have a look where to find it. Now there, of course, you can see the square of Pegasus to get you started, and it's that top left star that shares itself between Pegasus and Andromeda. So off to the top left there, the other side from the head of this horse is Andromeda. You'd otherwise have thought those were its back legs, wouldn't you? But there you go. Okay, let's have a look. We're just seeing Alpheratz here. But what we do is look at these stars here. Those are the main grouping of stars in Andromeda, and we just go up a couple of stars from the middle, and that takes us to M31. So M31, M32, and alongside M110, that's a group of three galaxies. But as I said, not just Messier objects, there's also another spiral galaxy, 891, a very attractive galaxy. Again, something that you'd have expected Messier to have spotted and catalogued. And also one of my favourite objects called the Blue Snowball, which is the remains of a star that has ended its life and has thrown off its outer atmosphere, I should say, which is expanding. And it does give this tinge of blue. Another Caldwell object, an open cluster down here, NGC 752. I nearly forgot. Some double stars of interest, even a triple star, and a variable star as well. So lots to be seen within this relatively faint constellation of Andromeda. Let's have a look at some of those objects. Now there you are, three galaxies all close together. This is maybe just a tad bigger than our own Milky Way galaxy. Well, estimates do vary in terms of numbers, but something towards 200 billion stars in that one galaxy. About the same, as I say, as our own, maybe a little bit bigger. Not quite so easy to make this one out, but because it's so almost embedded in because of line of sight with the outer layers of this galaxy. But here is M32, one of its companion galaxies. This one down here, a little bit more obvious, another elliptical galaxy, as is this one, a dwarf elliptical galaxy. This is M110. Now, this is a fantastic object. Of course, you won't see it quite like this because this has been photoshopped. Many minutes of exposure through a camera. Lots of images stacked one on top of each other to bring out the detail, to get that level of structure. But you can see all of the dust lanes here within this photograph. This is a spiral galaxy, as is our own, and you can see that idea of the spiral arms around the core of the galaxy that you see here. If you look through a telescope or binoculars, then yes, you can make out that core, but it does take quite a powerful telescope to show you these fainter outlying areas. But camera work will bring them out very nicely indeed, as you can see. But you can even see this object if you know precisely where to look with the naked eye. So given that's, well, I think that's a little overestimate. Mostly nowadays we talk about the distance being about 2,300,000 or so light years away. But there you go, something of that order. But it's been known about for a long time, as you can see, first recorded by one of the Arab astronomers way back, even before the Battle of Hastings, well before. But a splendid object, well worth trying to find. Let's have a look at those elliptical galaxies, the companions, M32 and M110. So they're bound by gravity to M31, but so are we. We're all part of the same, what we call local group of galaxies. There's also another one, M33, not too far away from Andromeda, within the constellation of Triangulum. And all of those galaxies are held together by gravity within this local group. And whereas most galaxies are flying apart, flying away from one another, M31 and our Milky Way are actually rushing towards each other and will eventually meet. We will collide. But don't worry, that won't happen for 4-5 billion years. And it won't be as cataclysmic as it might sound. What will happen is the galaxies will pass through each other because of the distances between stars are so vast. The chances of collisions are very small. So they'll pass through each other out the other side, and then still under the attraction of gravity will slow down and then start to move back towards each other. And this will happen a few times until they merge into one giant galaxy. And then M33 will join the party and merge with those with that new merged galaxy as well. Here's a splendid galaxy as well, NGC 891, which is in the Caldwell list as C23. Another open cluster is Caldwell 28. This one appeared quite a bit in the titles of that old science fiction series called The Outer Limits. So it has been nicknamed the Outer Limits Galaxy. Just the last object to show you now. This is the blue snowball. And you can see why it's named, can't you? We call it a planetary nebula. Planetary because in the early days when astronomers, like this one who discovered it, looked at it, they could see that it was round, so they thought maybe this is another planet. But it didn't move against the background stars, so clearly isn't a planet. What is it? It's a nebula. It's the gas that has been sloughed off from a star. In this one, you can actually see the donor star, if you like, that's just left behind. That's all that's left. A white dwarf with all of its atmosphere catching the light from that white dwarf and being irradiated and glowing with this lovely blue colour. So I hope you'll get out there and get looking up and find your way first to Pegasus, get out there, identify that big box shape relatively easily. From there, try near the horse's head, try that globular cluster, M15, and then work your way to the other side of Pegasus to find Andromeda, and look for M31 and look for that galaxy. Okay, see you next month.